them to have fun and for us to get some education. So I'm Marty McNair. This is Tanya House. So we are Jordan McNair's parents, founder, and also founder and co-founder of Jordan McNair Foundation. Some of you all may know our story. Our son went here. So he was a McDonough grad when he went to the University of Maryland, had a heat stroke the very first day of practice back in 2018 when he saw him, right? As a parent, I'm like you, like every other parent that's sitting in the stands right now, we ask two questions. Anybody know what the two questions are? Somebody take a stab. Anybody know what questions do we ask when it comes to our student athletes in sports? Yes.
How do you get that point?
All right, that's a good question. Somebody else? Dave, content, keep this one.
Gotcha.
So, no, we ask two questions. Can they play and why aren't they playing? Everybody agree with that? Right. They the main two we ask. We never thought to ask, or we don't think to ask the laundry list of questions that we should be asking prior to that, right? Last time I talked to my son was May 28th of 2018. Hey, school starts tomorrow, practice starts tomorrow. Have a good week. Let's talk later in the week. You know, they already get to college. They don't really need us that much. The next day, my conversation with George was, you can hear me, squeeze my finger. You can hear me, blink your eye. So at this point, had no clue, never knew anything about the heat stroke, heat exhaustion, heat related, right? All I knew was I thought you'd been in the sun too long, and you just find some shade and you drank some water and all was all right in the world. Unfortunately, in our story, we woke up, here's a healthy kid Tuesday morning, and then we went, our conversation with a doctor at the University of Maryland Shock Trauma Friday morning was, Jordan's liver is 85% necrosis. If you all don't make a decision to do an emergency liver transplant right now, he'll be dead within 12 hours. So at this point, what do you mean he's dead in 12 hours? Why is 85% of his liver dead for necrosis, the medical term? Unfortunately, we didn't know, like I said, my question started when we walked in emergency accident. And somebody just said, what happened? You know, I didn't think to ask any safety questions when the coaches were sitting at our kitchen table a couple days prior to Tuesday. I didn't think about that. I asked two questions. Can he get some playing time? And what's your stance on something else, mental health and substance abuse? That was pretty much it. I didn't think to ask, in the event of, if anything happens to my child, what systems do you have in place? I didn't think to ask any of these questions. You know, if my child can't play football again, what are you all going to do? If my child gets hurt on the field, what are you going to do? Never thought to ask anything. Never thought to ask about an emergency action plan and all these different types of things. So, Tuesday morning, emergency liver transplant, Friday morning, you can imagine there was a lot to learn. What was going on with your child? We, like every other parents in the room, I'm sure we can do everything we need to do to find out what exactly just happened. So while I was in the process of doing that, basically we had this emergency liver transplant. Unfortunately, there was too much damage done. Jordan passed June 13, 2018. 4 years ago, 2 weeks ago, June 13th was the anniversary. But since that started, when Jordan passed, one of the main things we kept asking ourselves, Tanya and I, was what did we miss? What did we miss? If we don't know these things, how many other parents and student athletes in America don't know these things? Because see, once again, Jordan was 6'5", 300 plus pounds, size 16 shoe, never had a medical emergency in his life. He'd never been in the hospital a day in his life other than the time that he was born. Am I right? Yeah, never had any problems. So again, when these things happened, when we got that call saying that Jordan was having a seizure, basically we like, okay, what you mean? You know, like, all right, Tony and I went around to the hospital, you know, just really trying to figure out what happened, and technically we really weren't prepared. So I had no idea that when a person has a heat stroke, the equivalent of when your body temperature reaches above 104 degrees, that means all your organs start to cook. So what that means is that your organs are in a microwave oven. And you literally have a 15 to about 30-minute window to get that core body temperature cooled down. And if you don't, unfortunately, imagine microwave oven scenario, these things start to happen. And it doesn't look good. So, show of hands. Anybody know anything other than what I just said about heat-related injuries and heat stroke? Okay, cool. All right, let's go. Do we have an idea of how many student athletes have died in the last 3 to 4 years from heat stroke? At least 40 to 50. Anybody know the ages of student athletes die from heat stroke. Literally from the majority of them in that 14 to 16, 17, 18 range, obviously a little higher at the collegiate level. We had no idea the stats that were associated with it. We didn't know that Jordan was the 31st student athlete that had died at the college level in the NCAA. I had no clue about none of these things, right? Now, we're just talking about college at this particular time. And he just kind of fell in line what they call predictable statistics. So, what is predictable statistics? This is predictability that these deaths are going to happen at the collegiate level. It always happens a lot of times in your larger athletes, right? Because again, when coaches do too much too quick, they will run the gases the very first day of practice. So these are all things I want everybody to kind of make note of because they were doing too much the very first day of practice. So 300 plus pounds, you're running 100 yards that way, 100 yards this way. You got 15 to 20 seconds to rest, and you're doing it all over again. And you got what they call repeat sprints. And you got to do this 10 times. First day of practice. Makes no sense. Never seen a lineman run no more than, even on a good snap, he ain't gonna get no more than maybe 5 yards, 7 yards max. That's a good snap, right? He seriously blocks somebody. But I don't know no special teams or running back that he's blocking for that can't get out the pocket in that amount of time. You know, so again, it just was unrealistic. So again, didn't know none of these things, right? So as we started our advocacy process, you probably read our flyer, you've seen that we've done a lot. But one of the key things we really focus on is a lot of parent education. Because see, at 6'5", 300 plus pounds with a size 16 shoe, you got options. And we literally had every option you could possibly imagine from, and it's ironic because when he first came here as a freshman, he had a football scholarship here. And University of Maryland was one of the very first schools in the 9th grade that showed interest, right? They call it an offer, but technically it really don't count until you get to the 11th grade. But University of Maryland, Ohio State, ironically the very first school. Last schools I thought we would ever go to would be University of Maryland, right? I thought I was I liked to coach at Penn State at that time. But, you know, hey, university works the way it works. But we had options. So the point that I'm making is we would go across the country. I don't know how Tanya always got me to take him everywhere, right? And we stayed in some shabby hotels, and our money wasn't that great at that time, so it was always a village effort and paying for the airline and paying for the hotel rooms. And one time we was in Tanya, I'm gonna put Tanya on blast. She put us in Texas at the Army Combine one year. And literally the hotel was so rough that we literally had to go out and buy our own bed and towels and everything from the local Walmart. But again, those were the early days when you do anything for your kids to get them there. But the point that I'm making is, see, I was just like everybody else again. All I ever did, the one thing that was consistent when everywhere I took them, college combines, Nike combines, Adidas combines, Under Armour combines, camps, clinics, there was one thing that was always consistent. There was never any parent education. There was never anybody that said, hey, let me teach you something while you're standing here, because I guarantee you, those of us that weren't sitting in our cars while the kids out there playing in the rain, the rest of us just been out there in the rain, shivering, and all that type of stuff. I done it. My son's whole athletic career. There was never any parent education. And that was one of the main things that when we started our foundation, we do our annual clinic here every year, right? And the main thing that we wanted to do, it rained our very first clinic. We had all the kids in here, we had the parents upstairs in the gym, and basically we were doing something similar, right? But the point that I'm making is, there was no parent education. Nobody never ever told me what the signs and symptoms of anything look like, much less the bathroom. Anybody know what the restroom is? Restroom straight down that hallway, right? But again, see, a lot of times when people do clinics and logistics and all, they don't think about these things. They just think about getting your kids out there. When in reality, I want you, because I'm sure we ain't gonna hold you that long, so if you go back out, I want you now, when you go back out on the field, I want you to visually look at certain things. I want you to look for the athletic, the first aid tent, where we got certified athletic trainers out there. Anybody know what an athletic trainer is? Certified athletic trainer? Okay. All right. Well, if you don't know, I have one here today on my team, and she's going to tell you exactly what it is, what she does, who she is, and what she does to keep your kids safe. Because so many times, we just sign our kids up. We don't understand, or we're not asking any questions on what type of safety equipment do you have. Do you have any type of safety certification? Do you have any type of safety training? So these are all things that should be, or you should be educated moving forward, things you should be asking when it comes to your child's safety. So, that being said, everybody, matter of fact, the interesting thing about, and I'll just tell you really, really quick, when Jordan passed and we got into the whole aspect of advocacy, right? I already know our advocacy was kind of fueled based off of I didn't want our grief of losing our only son to take us down that rabbit hole of despair. So I'd rather turn our pain into passion and try to make a difference because I really hadn't known about all of the student athletes that were dying from all these sports and things like that. So real, really quick, we started donating cold water tubs. Anybody know what a cold water tub is? All right, you see behind me, right? I know, right? I'm sorry. Anybody know what a cold water tub looks like? Got it. Anybody know the benefit of a cold water tub? Got it. The cool body down, right? Quick. But now, is the cold water tub the only option? No. That's why I'm going to let the certified athletic trainer, Ms. Jennifer, talk about that today. But the point is, when we first started, we always thought it was about the cold water tub. And we donated all these cold water tubs literally from Alaska to Florida, right? Over 300 cold water tubs. And then what we realized when kids kept dying, right? All sports, football, track, soccer, lacrosse, you name it, kids were steady having heat stroke. So, I'm sorry, let me say this, man. I got signage right behind me. So you see the signs and symptoms of heat-related injury. I know I talk about heat stroke, but heat stroke just don't go from zero to heat stroke. It goes from heat exhaustion to heat stroke. You got a window of time. I'll let the professionals talk about that since I have her here to give you a better reading on that. But again, that's where it kind of goes. So it just don't go from 0 to 100. It's a process. The whole goal for us to do is to train people on how to identify the signs, the symptoms, before it even gets to that level. The more of us that's educated, guess what? The safer our kids will be. But back to what I was saying, we donated cold water tubs, right? And then kids were steady dying. You see, I like to talk. So I'm sitting here saying, it'll take me 10 years to get out of all of the DMV in the schools in the DMV. So where can we be more impactful? It's legislation. So okay, let's get laws passed. And then we're going to get these laws passed. So we started the process of getting a couple laws passed. In the state of Maryland, we've got 4 laws passed already. 4 in the last 4 years since our son's passed. That's unheard of. But at the end of the day, guess what? Kids will keep dying. So again, one of the things that I learned about getting laws passed is a law don't mean nothing if everybody in here that drives, right? And let's just say July the 1st, they just changed the law. The laws go into effect July the 1st. So 8 days ago, let's just say they changed you can't turn right on a red, on a green, on a red light anymore. Can you imagine how many of us, we get pulled over, we got tickets, how many of us really will say, damn, I didn't know that was a law? And that's the interesting thing about policy and legislation. You have to get the word out to let people know that this law protects your kid, your kid, your kid, your kid, your kid. That's advocacy when it comes to legislation. Unfortunately, as we were doing this, kids are steady dying. So it's like, wait a minute, it's the safety equipment, we got legislation passed. The interesting thing is, we don't really see young people pass in our geographical area. But some of these last 3 summers have been horrendous across the nation because it's not in our geographical area. Our story got a national spotlight. So a lot of people know our story nationally, but what about the kid in West Texas? What about the kid in Cincinnati? What about the kid in Kentucky? So it usually boils down to when do these incidents always happen? The very first day of practice. See, because at times, family, I know we ain't got no superstars at this age. Let's just be honest. We don't. So we have to be very, very smart and mindful when it comes to what these coaches are doing, right? If there's any coaches in the room, coaches be smart. Because guess what? Last summer, they arrested 2 coaches in Georgia and charged them with murder of a young lady that died in 2019, a basketball player. We don't know these things because they're not in our geographical area. This is my business. And at the end of the day, if somebody does anything to your child, guess what? You don't want to hear any coach's explanation of what went wrong. Am I right? Right. So, that being said, we got laws passed. And then what we realized was it ain't about just laws, it's about the emergency action plan because kids were steady dying. What's the common denominator? Emergency action plan. Show of hands. Anybody know what emergency action plan is? Okay. Anybody know what a fire drill is? That's an emergency action plan. Right? Now, the interesting thing about that is every time your child walks on the field, the potential for a fire can happen just like that every single day. Now, with that emergency action plan, same way with a fire drill. I'm gonna run out that exit. If I can't make it out there, I'm gonna try to make it down there. Those are the goals of emergency action plans. That's what's the consistent thing in these student athlete steps. That's the consistent thing that will keep your student athlete safe. So I'm gonna let Ms. Jen talk about that, but these are just things that we should be learning as parents. So we're gonna try to give it to you, and I guarantee you everybody will walk away a lot more educated. You'll be looking out on the field like, they got that, they got that. And guess what? If they don't have these things, make an executive decision. People call me all the time. I don't see the cold water tub on the field. Okay, it's 90-something, it's 90 plus degrees with a heat index of dangerous temperatures. Make executive decisions. If it's too hot, don't let them play. They'll be there tomorrow. And another thing, I'm gonna say this before I go and turn it over to Jennifer. Family, I can't advocate or I can't express enough. As a father, of course, when something happens to your child, you accept the responsibility. It was totally my fault what happened to George. But because I felt as though I should have prepared him I couldn't prepare him for what I didn't know or what we didn't know. But in my mind as a father, I always felt as though I could have. Taught him how to fight. Always told him to be a leader, never a follower. He knew my stance on substance abuse, how to make good decisions, especially at the collegiate level, right? He knew all that. However, the one thing that I felt as though I didn't teach Jordan when he was young was how to advocate for himself. How to advocate, and I want that to resonate with everybody. Teach them now how to advocate for themselves. If it don't look right, if they feel uncomfortable, if they see something happen to a teammate, speak up. See, because we're in this world of one-liners. Anybody know what I mean by that? Hey, how was school today? Oh, it was good. We ain't even gonna say, oh, hey, it was good. And we'll accept that. What was good about it? Is anybody making you feel uncomfortable? Teach that now. Because again, once they get to a certain level, man, they done locked in. They mind what coaches and them selling that. You know, we used to tell Jordan all the time. Especially when he was in high school. I remember one time, he had all these offers. I mean, we had shoe boxes. It was 300 pieces of mail the very first day of his junior year. So you say, the mail lady asked her, who is he? For sure, all this mail that we get. But sometimes you gotta reel them back in and like, man, guess what? You don't care about none of that. You need to get a better grade in algebra. Now, go take the trash out. You know, so we got to keep them grounded. But again, if anything else that I beg of all of you that I wish I could have did that I didn't do was plant that seed of advocacy right now at this age. Because, see, they see things that might not happen to them. You know, we live in this world that ain't happening to me. So, again, I ain't going to say nothing. It happens to their teammates. Guess what? If they see something happen to their teammates, when Jordan was at Maryland, what was going on? Now we find out after our son has passed. Now we find out all of the things that was going on at that time. If we had planted the seed of advocacy, maybe, you know, again, it could have made a difference. That seed of advocacy, and another thing also is make sure you tell them that this is their body. Guess what, y'all? At 6'5", 300 plus pounds, here I am, all his life, do this, do that. He was always the biggest guy in the room. You know when he got it? At 15 years old. When did it click mentally? When he became a beast? At 15 years old. When did it happen? In an AAU game up in Pennsylvania. Somebody was talking trash to him, and finally, he got the guy with an old school Detroit Pistons foul on the fast break, and finally, I'm over there like, son, way to go, son. Finally, it's like the kid got the fight and he won his first fight. Finally, I've been telling him since he was 10. He got it when he was ready to get it. And that's the main thing, family. All we can do is keep them involved, keep them safe, teach them how to advocate for themselves, teach them to listen to their body. And that's the most important thing. And I think that would be the best way to prepare them for safety and success in their youth and sports career. So everybody can get yourself around the applause. Don't go nowhere yet. Thank you. So let me make an introduction.